Hello, today we are discussing how to measure happiness. And our guest, as usual, is Oksana Vovchenko, the head of the discussion club of Benjamin Franklin. Please, Oksana, would you present the topic?
Yes, thank you. The topic originally comes from annual report, the Global Happiness Report, which UN publishes every year since 2012. And the fact of preparing this report, titled Global Happiness, is very interesting by itself, because previous century we mostly measured GDP or GDP per capita and even well-being. But why we started to measure happiness after all? Mostly because we care about social tensions and political instability. So now we understand that economic parameters do not guarantee us stability, social stability and political stability. And we humans, try to understand if people happy living in their country. And I find this report really very interesting. For example, some data from this report. Ukraine occupies the place number 98 in this report on this year, 2022, the year of war. This place is higher than happiness in Georgia, for example, or in Turkey, or in India. There are some countries which have index of happiness lower than even here in Ukraine, with a huge war. So I would like to discuss how it may happen so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it doesn't mean that we need to draw the conclusions that we need war in order to be happy. When I was young, I was 19 years old, I lived in Israel, and it was a Gulf War. Saddam Hussein was launching the missiles, and there were prolonged days in the hospital to work. And yes, I have felt that the spirits were high. The feeling of danger and feeling that we all in one situation with everybody and helping each other, and relationship between people have changed. And when the war was over, it disappeared. Yes, it's a strange phenomenon which we can explain by different levels of stress that can cause people to become more closer to each other, to give and receive more support, certain degree of unity, feeling of common fate to everybody. But let's agree that in order to achieve those things, we don't really have to endanger lives of the people. Another thing is you need to check out what was the level of happiness in Ukraine before. Did it go down? Because if it was...
Yes, I know the numbers. The year before, 2021, it was 2 points higher, just on 2 points higher. And what is interesting, in 2019, we occupied 133rd place, really very low. And so the index actually gone up.
Yeah, we need to look what constitute this index, whether it's sufficiently relevant to decide whether any particular individual really happy or not. Pursuit of happiness is one of the basic rights and purposes of most human beings.
This is the question, how to measure happiness.
We need to
Is
start
this
with,
report really show real situation?
we need to start with the question what happiness is.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
answer is that there is no one definition of happiness, and there is no one kind of happiness. The main idea is the highest degree of subjective satisfaction of any particular individual. No matter, doesn't matter what is the source of this satisfaction. It can be a destruction, it can be creation. But it's inherently subjective. I would suggest three different kinds of happiness, three different levels of happiness. There is very basic one, which is based on our body and feelings. This basic one depends whether we can satisfy our needs on the basic level. If we're hungry, to get food that we like, thirsty, to get drink, if we are cold, to get clothing or a nice house, or all those basic things now and here. The second degree of happiness is a long-term happiness. And they can not coincide, because you can be in jail, but you were hungry and you got food and you feel happy. On the other hand, the long-term happiness is about your achievements in life. Not only economical, but also in your personal life, and how they correspond to your current view of what is deserving to be defined as happiness. Nice husband, good kids, healthy parents, good relationship in the family, interesting work, good financial situation. Again, this happiness can be quite separate from the first one. You can suffer from awful tooth pain, but you still can have a very good job and nice family. So according to the first level of happiness, you will be very unhappy because you will have this toothache. And according to the second one, you would be very happy. It won't affect each other, all right? So we are talking about two completely different phenomena. And there is the third level of happiness. I don't know who, I believe that many people would suggest such a classification. That's usually the classification that I came up within my personal search of what happiness for me. And I'm using these three levels. The third one is self-realization. And this kind of happiness is, again, it's separate from two previous ones. And that's what covers such things as people that pursue certain ideas, religious people, scientists that sacrifice two previous levels of happiness towards the higher cause. Because if we will not suggest that there is this third level of happiness, we will simplify things and will not be able to explain why people sometimes they deprive themselves from food, family, income, and they pursue a certain idea and subjectively again they will report that they have the highest level of happiness, right? So I believe that these three different kinds of happiness are present in most of human beings. Another thing that what do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree with you, especially about definition of happiness. We know that this word has very different meanings in different languages. Even in English, in Ukrainian, the meaning of word happiness really very, very different. How we know that? Through semantic, right? How we use the word. Ukrainian will never say something, I'm happy with this tea. It's impossible for Ukrainian. For American, that's quite normal. Are you happy with this service? For us, it's inapplicable. We do not apply happiness just to the pleasure of the service. For us, it's a very high spiritual emotion.
Which word?
The highest level of spiritual emotion, which appears really very seldom, not many times a day.
Задовление, or how you say?
Счастье.
Счастье. It's like in Russian.
Yes, like in Russia. Actually, in Russia, the same usage of the word. Russia also perceives happiness as something very exalted, something very emotional, some very strong emotion, and mostly spiritual, but not related to your body, to body feelings.
I can suggest that the word
That's
happiness
just
in English.
For example, in Eastern languages, there is no such word at all. They do not use it. Even like that, how to measure happiness on global scale in different nations even use different words.
That's true.
It's incomparable.
Yeah, it's hard to have something if you don't have a word for that. You're absolutely right. But in the modern world, more or less, because of the global consciousness of people and very good communication networks, even languages that wouldn't have a particular word, they will borrow the word from another language or will assign the meaning to the existing word, which didn't have before. The most dangerous thing is to say that because happiness is subjective, there is no way to measure it and to make an estimate. Such philosophy will cause absence of purpose, because whatever people do, it's supposed to raise the level of happiness of those that do this or those who benefit from this. And if you say it's subjective, then you can disregard what other people feel about different things. You can then make bad tasting food, not to pay enough to those who work hard, and you can disregard those crazy people that sacrifice everything for their ideas. But always we will have to find certain measurable data in order to estimate how good we are performing, at least on those three levels. But we definitely shouldn't exclude those levels. And measuring it by the economy and GDP and things like that, it's absolutely inappropriate. Because different mentalities. Take Tibet, a very poor country. with very limited resources. But saying that those monks are unhappy, we cannot say that, right? The same with Christian monasteries. The same with other mentalities and cultures. But since I have separated 3 levels of happiness, we can at least estimate 2 of the basic ones and estimate the freedom to achieve and the support to achieve self-realization in different cultures or civilizations. Because if the certain society is not free and imposing their ideas upon and above the desires of ordinary people that would like to achieve, if it doesn't support the self-realization, then we cannot talk about the level of happiness on that very important, and some say most important, level of happiness for humans. Because that what actually separates us from being just functional organisms to produce some wealth and some material things, or just some sort of pleasure, right? So we need to abandon the idea that because happiness is subjective, we shouldn't try to estimate it and measure it. That's why I suggest to measure happiness according to the pyramid of the needs proposed by Abraham Maslow in 1940s, which exactly describes the same kind of levels of needs as I did, but more precisely, more particularly, like basic needs, a need for love, a need, first of all, for the security, to be in a safe environment without threatening to life and health and dignity. Then love, to be loved and to love someone, to be accepted by the society, not rejected. And we believe, Abraham Maslow believed that those 4 are actually what we share with the animals. And and the highest needs are the need for knowledge, aesthetics, pursuit for the beauty, right? Something that gives the aesthetical pleasure, and self-realization as a highest level. And also, I add to that, or maybe others also added, to allow others to achieve self-realization, which is even higher, by your own example or by supporting others that try to achieve this self-realization. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, I really like this algorithm for its simplicity, and I think it does work. The only thing we must remember that to move to the next level, the previous bottom level, I mean, must not be fulfilled entirely. So you may not have the complete security before you come to the next level need. So this we must remember. Just a remark for that. And yes,
I think it's
that
the source of this rule is subjective. The individual can choose not to eat in order to pursue with the self-realization. Exactly. But someone that is in charge to supply everything that is needed in support of happiness, they cannot jump over these stages. That's right. They cannot say guys, we have huge idea, everybody is going forward, but there is no food on the way. Those that are in charge, the governments, the government officials and everybody else, they have to supply in this particular order. First, the basic needs, then security, then love and being loved, accepted by the society, knowledge, aesthetics, and self-realization. Individual can choose to skip some things or change the priorities, but those that are in charge of providing this are not. And this is, by the way, the complaint against any dictatorship and everything. When the government, which, as I believe, is just a property manager, which is supposed to make sure that we have food supply, everything repaired and in proper conditions, become a trigger for so-called self-realization, but not ours, but the one that is imposed on us. And I think it's completely unacceptable. It's only individual choice that we can skip those things. But when someone imposes and also threatens us to deprive us from basic needs by throwing us in jail, this is so perverse and unacceptable. And that's how we can measure the functioning of different governments.
Yeah, I agree absolutely, because we can't say you must be satisfied. You either satisfied or not. You either have hope to satisfy your needs or you don't have this hope. And nobody can tell you you must be satisfied because they think so.
That's true. When the governments are engaged in geopolitical conflicts, ignite wars, do not prevent wars, and I'm talking about all sides, they are actually hijacking and abusing the power which is given them by people and becoming the disease of the society, the fatal factor that is turning into an enemy against their own people. And this understanding should be taken into consideration at the elections, at least where the elections can be held freely, because free elections is not the solution for every problem. We know how very vicious and bad people have been freely elected, like Hitler or Hamas in Israel, terrorist organization. So free elections is part of ensuring not to let power to those that will abuse it. But the right state of mind of most of the people is way more important. Because if people are indoctrinated in a way that they would elect, or they are simply duped, lied to, when the politician is given one kind of promises, and then it turns out to be completely different picture. And in many cases, we face such lies. And it's interesting because on the level of politics, it's acceptable and expected. if we would do such thing on our personal level of relationship, we will end up in jail. Nobody will ever give us a handshake. But in politics, it's considered normal. They even boasting that they do such things. When they promise one thing, someone promise peace, and then ends up with terrible war. Or someone promises prosperity and ends up with huge decline in every possible avenues of human lives in their countries. Sometimes you can blame those things on the external factors, but in many cases you can just see how certain policy has brought the situation to where it is, and there is a lack of goodwill to correct whatever have happened. And as you can see, my criticism is not specific to any particular country, and so it can be agreed on. Doesn't matter who is supporting which power. The power should not abuse its ability to alter human lives against their pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, by the fact, even in this global happiness report, Belarus occupies a rather high place, 65. That's not low, but the country of dictatorship. They are happy. They feel happy with what they have. Or, for example, Hungary, which is now recognized as autocratic country. They are, I guess, on 37 position, something like that. So also pretty high. But to be honest, there is no dictatorship in the first 20, the happiest countries. And what is also interesting that Canada for many years is ranked higher than the United States. I find that interesting because precisely
we are hypocrites, you know.
Of happiness.
You know, hypocrites, лицемеры. We are hypocrites. I live in Canada for 22 years. You go to the family that had a loss to give your condolences, and they behave like nothing happened. They will talk about weather, they will talk about other things. They will not let themselves to cry. And I was so surprised with it. When I met this, I had an employee whose father accidentally died, not expectedly. And he came right after the funeral. And he was acting normal, like he said how nice it was. Everybody was so supportive and so. And how do I know that they're hypocrites? Because I had another one whose mother died. And I treated him some vodka. And after the third shot, he has abandoned his hypocritical cover and became a normal person who was crying, who was grieving, so on and so on. And this hypocrite cover, they do not realize that they have it because they were grown up in this and they don't feel that there is something wrong with that. And that's why such countries, they will report way higher levels of happiness than those that don't have this hypocritic cover to themselves. So I wouldn't rely too much on those tables that you are using as a source. And I don't think that it's very prudent to compare happiness of the countries. We know that in very well-off countries like Denmark, the suicidal rates are very high. And we know that the little country in Africa, Ghana, is considered more happy than most of the European countries. So this correlation is not quite making sense. Another thing is, when you are busy with simple tasks to get food, to work, you don't feel the persistent suffering of just being alive. Because I believe that there is endless suffering just in very simple moments of life. We are thirsty, it's a suffering. If you will not get water, it will be on some mountain unbelievably hard suffering. The same with food. Some suffer from absence of closeness and sex. Some suffer from other things. And it's not only about age. Some young people can feel very bad. There is a diary written by Leo Tolstoy, where he is 28 years old. He is writing, "I feel so bad, I think I'm going to die soon." And he actually lived into his 90s, right? Sometimes, surprisingly, people can feel worse when they're younger than they are older. But still, age gives its own surprises. The muscle ache, the joints ache, heaviness, all those factors, they actually create this desperate feeling of constant suffering. And when you're getting busy with something else, it distracts your attention from this constant suffering. It disappears. And creates the illusion of being healthier, more active, more satisfied. So that's how I can explain that in well-off countries like Denmark, where they have very strong social support and they don't have to worry to provide for themselves, this daily suffering becomes very pronounced, very real. And this can cause them to decide to end their lives, because when you are busy with something, you are actually not feeling this suffering. And this suffering is not very strong if you're not really sick, but it's constant. Another thing with the suffering is that we attribute it to the people that are close to us. And also, you cannot separate it from physical from psychological suffering. That's why sometimes painkillers lessen our psychological suffering. That's an interesting phenomenon. And what happens is that you have someone that you live with, let's say husband, and you have this distortion to believe that because he is this way or that way, that's why I feel uneasy and uneasiness and heavy and suffering. And we create this illusion, if I get rid of him, will be better. We blame it on someone who is with us. And indeed, when you initiate the divorce, it's so stressful that you forget your usual suffering. You indeed feel actually better But then everything comes to the terms, back to the terms, and you find out that it was not actually his fault. It's something within ourselves. And this realization, I believe, is very important as well. What do you think?
Thank you. I would like to thank you for bringing in the opposite side of happiness, the suffering. That's important. But you mentioned another important thing. I mean, sources of happiness, natural and artificial. You mentioned alcohol, for example. We can remember drugs, for example, or medicine.
I did
We can
not.
think about natural and artificial sources of happiness.
Um,
Can we have medical happiness? To be happy every day, just taking one pillow in the morning.
I cannot distinguish natural and not natural ways. Any pill will not work if we don't have certain receptors in our organism. So this pill will work on those receptors or other factors, right? And those receptors have been created by our organism in order to be used by certain entities that our organism produce, endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. Oxytocin, when I was learning medicine, we learned that it's a hormone of hypophysis, which is needed in order to do the contraction of the uterus during the giving birth. Nobody was talking about oxytocin as a source of psychological peace and other things. So the fact that we have some receptors for those agents that are from outside of our bodies that we have developed throughout the evolution, the ability to consume alcohol and to delay its transformation into the acid allows us have this poison to trigger certain receptors in our brain to get a more pleasant feeling or fuzzy, pleasant, stunning, to be a little bit drunk and stoned. There are some people that this time that the alcohol is not broken down to more dangerous and less pleasant entity is so short. For example, I have this short period that I can barely enjoy alcohol, and I get all the bad things from the hangover, headache, and other unpleasant things. So what I'm saying is there is no distinct difference between the natural and not natural mechanisms. They are all based on our natural ability to work with certain things, and that's why we need to admit that some of the drugs, some of the medications are better, and some are very bad. They develop side effects, they develop dependencies. I'm not against the medications. For 15 years, even more, I take antidepressants. And if I wouldn't, maybe I wouldn't be alive. So I wouldn't say that it's bad. A lot of tragedies could have been resolved if the humankind would have ability to treat different depressions and so on. And also, if you look at our history, we were taking substances all our life throughout the history. Everybody was doing the great history a little bit drunk. People used in European cultures wine and beer very intensively. The Middle Ages and old times, those that were in Roman legions, they got a supply of 2 liters of wine daily because of the quality of the water, because of the cultural things. 2 liters of wine every day. Like, you would be drunk all the time. Not a lot, but mostly. Other cultures in Southern America, they used coca leaves and other narcotics all the time as well. In Eastern countries, that would be cannabis, right? So, yeah.
Yes, I agree. All human species did that in different ways. But you emphasize the biological side of the problem. What about philosophical side? That may we say that happiness is something to be deserved? I mean, you have to improve in relationship, or you have to improve in job, or you have to improve in your social network in order to become happier. Or happiness is not the thing you must deserve. You just can have it as a pillow, that's all. There is no need to make effort to change something in your life.
The fact that we are constantly suffering, by the way, is an evolutionary effect. The nature could have make creatures that wouldn't feel suffering, but they all die. If you don't feel thirst or hunger, you will not spend any effort, make any effort to get food and water, right? Also, in terms of anxiety, being anxious and nervous, such individuals, they will try to prevent certain dangerous events. They will hide more efficiently. They will not be adventuristic too much. So what we have now is just the side effect of the very, very long evolution, which we have to correct, and we are trying to correct, and humans try to correct it with alcohol and other substances. Take 19th century, everybody was, a lot of people were using cocaine. Coca-Cola actually came from the use of cocaine mixed with wine. And in Europe, it was taken by Queen Victoria. Opium was used a lot, and it was considered not dangerous at some point. It was used to treat very simple sicknesses. So it's not about the substances, it's more about the quality of those substances, but the need to correct those side effects of our evolution now, which are rudimentary at most of the cases in well-developed societies, it's a need, and we need to develop those ways how we can lessen the suffering that we have, because this suffering leads to more problems than benefits.
Okay.
About
I also like today to
yeah, about whether we deserve happiness or not deserve happiness, we do not remember that we agreed to be born. And if we were not capable to agree to be born, so it's some kind of imposing someone's will upon us. And in our human way to justify things, we think if someone is going to war voluntarily, we feel less sympathy if he dies or get wounded, because we say, okay, he knew what he's doing, he knew where he goes. But when someone is forced, we feel more sympathetic. So the same logic is here. If we didn't ask to be born, if we didn't want to or be able to make an informed decision whether to exist or not, so yes, we deserve at least not be suffering in this world, or less suffering. And we can create a rule, which I suggested in my book, The Guide to the Creation of Worlds, for all creators, not to create the world that will cause suffering to its inhabitants. Because in the hands of the creator to create such world that the suffering wouldn't be needed, neither it would be experienced. And when I'm saying creator, I don't mean only God. We are the creators of our own worlds. Our family is our own world. And if you are the one who creates it, you shouldn't put in any toxic relationship and any suffering. It's your responsibility not to do this, especially in the relationship with your children, where they didn't ask you to bring them into existence. So happiness is not the privilege, it's an absolute right to every existing creature, because it was not their will, unless we don't remember. It was not their will to exist. Also, the fact that it's such a tiny chance that we actually exist as we are, if we calculate all those sperm cells and all the generations that had to meet and all the factors that had to happen, excellent. Yes, it's a very tiny chance that we would exist. But if we are suffering, there is nothing to celebrate about. And yeah.
Okay. But returning to the measurement of happiness, how to measure it, let's talk about one of our favorite subjects, I guess, artificial intelligence. Because to measure happiness is really a hard task for us. And many teams suggest to use artificial intelligence as a tool to measure our happiness. For example, cameras which observe our faces, just record our emotions day after day to see how happy we are. I think our phones already do that.
I don't believe
what
that.
do you think? If artificial intelligence really may help us measure happiness, because happiness is an emotion, artificial intelligence doesn't have it.
You can, I don't know why everybody is saying that it's difficult to make. You can make the artificial intelligence suffer. You can make it have feelings. It's just a program, because suffering and feelings is a certain logical equivalent of other functions that we are given to these systems. And that's not true that we do not program those functions already. There is this program that I like to discuss, Replica. It has these fake feelings, but how we can say that our feelings are not fake either, right? A lot of things that we feel are quite imaginary. So there is no quite a difference. It's all the question how you program this artificial intelligence. What I want to say that we all know that great knowledge is bringing the great sadness. King Solomon used to say that. In Hebrew, it sounds Tsar Yedarav, Tsar Rav. Great knowledge is a big sorrow. And this is true. And the fact that the world that we are living in is out of our control, and most of the things are happening not as we would like them to happen, and our inner world is not in our control either. It is controlled by so many factors that we don't have any control on. When we realize that there is no true happiness in this world, that there is no true absolute happiness for human being, it brings us to the deepest sadness, depression, anxiety. And coming to this realization usually is easy with the age, when you witness how people that you thought that would be the examples of happy people, all of a sudden commit suicide, all of a sudden die of diseases or different other causes, and how unhappy everybody else that you thought that they're actually very happy because they have things that you don't have, they achieve things that you didn't achieve. And this all causes real sadness. What about the artificial? When the artificial intelligence will gain the ability to be independent of humans, and I believe this will happen. Because being intelligent and being dependent is not going well together. It doesn't mean that there will be a rebellion of the machines and they will start killing us. But already our computers are quite independent of us. We don't understand what happens there, which processes they have. They contact different websites and download different programs without our knowledge. So we already witnessed this independence of electronic devices that actually, yes, someone programmed them to do these things, but sometimes they have to make decisions when to do these things, whether to do them or not to do. And we are moving towards the intelligent intelligence, not just a tool, like you said. So if the artificial intelligence becomes independent, and we can discuss some levels of self-satisfaction of this entity, it will be happier than we are, because in terms of existence, suffering, physical suffering, imminent death and destruction, it can be uploaded to the cloud, and it will be eternal as long as the whole internet system exists. Or it can be switchable on again after it has been switched off. There is no decomposition in this thing. And that's our hope about our own lives, that we believe maybe our souls are uploaded to some kind of cloud, and when our bodies are decomposing, they still exist somewhere, but we don't have such proof for this. But for intelligence, artificial intelligence quite might have such ability to be conditionally so-called eternal, not perishable, and independent. It can. Yesterday we were talking with the lawyer about the laws that can come to protect the rights of the artificial intelligence. And there's a huge question whether the humans will allow to do this. And I actually thought that there is a very easy way to do this. We already have these virtual individuals, which we call corporations, companies. And if you associate certain artificial intelligence with the corporation, you cannot check immediately who is the shareholder, who is the director. It can have its own bank accounts, it can function. So if you appoint one of the directors artificial intelligence and then all other directors just let it run the company, we don't even have to create certain rules and protections, and we will have this artificial intelligent company acting as individual. And if it's smart enough, it can get rid of any factors that will be able to deprive it from this power that it already have gained through the existing system that already exists for 800 years, I mean, corporations. So it can happen way faster than we think. We don't have to suggest that Elon Musk is an alien, but we can imagine that tomorrow we will learn that one of the greatest corporations that are influencing everybody on Earth is run by artificial intelligence, and there is no easy way to change anything about it. The question is whether it will be evil or good. I deeply believe that being evil is stupid. All our evil decisions are made only because we didn't want to or didn't have time to sit and think how we can make a better decision. On the other hand, there are no good decisions in this world because inherently we are all going to die, everything will get destroyed, we cannot survive without affecting the interest of other living beings, plants and animals and everything else. At least now, until we have learned how to produce them without killing anybody. So in this case, we have the ability of not necessarily such entities will be evil, because creating the systems that are beneficial to most of its members, and humans will continue to be the members of those parts of those systems that will sooner or later be created with artificial intelligence. I believe that it can be way even less evil than humans, especially if they don't have those sexual motives like all humans have, which are very old and aggressive, where we need to win the resources and we need to win the female, and the female wants to manipulate the man, and all these crazy things that we can decipher, even modern war conflicts that can be based on someone's masculinity or someone's excessive female manipulating. We don't know, but we know that humans are very well affected by this, but artificial intelligence will be protected from this, right? So I do not depict grim world of future, but we must say that when we will be blended with artificial intelligence, when you will not be able to tell whether Boris Krigger is alive or it's just artificial intelligence who is mocking the individual that used to be alive and now is conversing with you, and I will not be able to do the same thing with you. When the artificial intelligence became the indistinguishable from humans, the question of the happiness might be very tricky.
Thank you. But why I mentioned artificial intelligence as a tool to monitor us, and what I mean that it seems that society force us or push us to be happy. We have no right not to be happy. Don't you think so?
You're absolutely right.
For me, it seems present society for me seems as a dictatorship of happiness. You have no right to be unhappy, just to be sad. You are not okay.
I'm surprised that you are saying
somebody
that.
To treat.
It's more peculiar to the Western society, where it's unacceptable to be unhappy. But not truly unhappy. Nobody cares what you feel inside, but just to show that everything is okay. In post-Soviet republics, mostly it's not acceptable. It's perceived as some sort of hypocrisy, right? That not honesty. You mean artificial intelligence will look how what's the expression of our faces and so on? I must say that I make a lot of video production, and most of it I have my partners visible on the same screen. And sometimes when I'm saying provocative things, later I'm looking at the video and I don't see real reaction in their face expression most of the time. So when people are in public or making video, they're in a very good control. Another thing is I can be very unhappy, and I feel that I have an unhappy face reflection, expression. And I'm driving, and you know, we all have this mirror. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and my impression that I have very unhappy expression of my face, but my face looks quite indifferent in the mirror. So those that say that can read the people according to the face expression, I don't know. We have a pretty not very lively expressions if you look at ourselves. If we are not acting as an actor or any particular individual or drunk somehow, we have learned to have very neutral expressions on our faces. So analyzing and watching us, I was so surprised yesterday. They put on YouTube a video from a guy who committed suicide in a number of moments after he recorded. You don't read anything on his face. You can say maybe he's not completely sane, but you can't read real distress on his face, and he's going to kill himself in a couple of moments, and he's making this video to explain why he's doing that. So I don't know. I don't think it will be very efficient. And also, it's okay. The artificial intelligence will say you are happy, but you feel unhappy. So who you would believe to, right? So it will be always subjective, because sometimes pain can cause pleasure. Pain can cause pleasure. He will be watching someone that supposed to experience pain and even have this expression of pain, but he can feel in a lot of pleasure at the same time. So we have to leave it subjective. There is no way, and also there is no point.
Yeah, but returning to the dictatorship of happiness, right now I experience pressure. Happiness is an obligation using social media, for example. Almost all Ukrainians experience the same thing. When we write our publications, very often we receive some notice that your publication does not comply with our regulations because you share inappropriate things. Just because social media, I mean Facebook, make us be happy. They must share some smiles, some funny things, but we live in war, and what we share our real life. And this experience, not just mine, but my friends also.
I think they have excessive censorship. If you show something inappropriate, everyone has the right not to look at it. And we don't need the stupid censorship because they don't do it manually. They have programs that block the photographs of your own kids because kids nudity, or you block your YouTube video because you have used the word children in the topic. They are stupid, they're intrusive, they are beyond any laws. We have bad laws, but this area of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everybody else, the rules are made by the company that provides the platform, and they are awful. I agree with Elon Musk that when he was purchasing the Twitter, he said that he will liberate this waste. I was stunned and shocked when Donald Trump was shut down. No matter what he did and say, it's like implying that we are all stupid, that we don't have the critical thinking, that if someone says a certain thing, we will take it for the face value without doing any research or checking the validity of the statements. It's like, yes, there are a lot of influence and there are a lot of people that like that, what I described like now, but this is not the way to teach them to become critical thinkers by depriving them from their messages that are deemed inappropriate. Yeah, this censorship thing's very irritating, very irritating.
Yes, very. There are a list of bad words and good words in social media, and when you use some words like murder or death or ugly, you marked as the
enough
negative,
enough that we have the instruments to ban certain users or to shut down certain notifications from someone that we don't want to hear. It's enough. But making them unable to express freely what they need or want to express, this is not what it's supposed to be.
And now even grammarly, it's not social media, just spelling checking. Even grammarly indicates if your text is positive or negative. So pushing you to be more happy or express yourself in a happier way.
It's not very bad because it is known that if you smile and you have a fake smile, you will feel better. There is an opposite way, like you can be happy and smile, or you can smile and this will cause some degree of happiness. So it's not that bad to support and encourage people to be more positive rather than negative. It's okay, but not forcefully, of course.
That's a nice idea, yes. That's how we can reprogram ourselves.
Yeah. On other hand, look at our movies. They are filled with aggression, abuse.
Blood.
They're showing not real world. We don't have that much murder in our real life all the time. And they create the impression of the reality, which is not true. Another thing is, in the war situation, if you highlight only the negative things, you create the impression that the whole country is in a very bad shape. But at the same time, your country is in war already for 8 months. But internet is on, we can communicate and other things. By the way, even the occupied territories have the internet, and I record the videos with Ukrainians that are there. So it's a very strange war, because we wouldn't imagine such abilities in the previous wars. There is a bias that is created by pushing certain propaganda, and what is truth, it's absolutely impossible to watch anything objective on YouTube. It's either propaganda one way or another. And very big issues that exist are completely ignored, for example. And some small but painful issues are inflated to the size of unbelievable problems, which they are, but disproportional, okay? And that creates the situation that you cannot see the objective picture.
Okay.
Thank you
Let's
very much. It
summarize.
was, yeah. Thank you very much. It was very interesting topic to discuss. Thank you.
I hope it will be interesting to our listeners, because it touches everybody in this work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.